Distress call mistaken. Part 1. The emergency beacon screamed across the void of space, its desperate signal cutting through the cosmic silence like a knife. Captain Zethra of the Galactic Rescue Service received the transmission while patrolling the Outer Rim territories, where civilized space met the unknown darkness beyond. "Captain, we're picking up a Class 7 distress signal," announced Communications Officer Veltar, his forearms dancing across the control panel with practiced efficiency. The Zilithian's pale blue skin flickered with bioluminescent patterns that indicated high stress levels. Zethra, a tall Coranthian with crystalline features that caught the bridge lighting, moved swiftly to examine the readings. Her species had evolved on a low-gravity world where quick movements meant survival, and that evolutionary advantage served her well in emergency response situations. "Location?" she asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had conducted hundreds of rescue operations across the galaxy. "Sector 7G, approximately 4 light-years from the Terran quarantine zone," Veltar replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. Every species in the Galactic Alliance knew about the Terran quarantine zone. It was where they had contained the humans after first contact had gone so terribly wrong. The Terran species had been discovered 3 standard years ago, and the initial diplomatic mission had ended in catastrophe. The humans had somehow managed to destroy an entire Alliance fleet with primitive kinetic weapons and something they called nuclear devices. The Alliance had quickly established a quarantine zone around their homeworld, marking it as a forbidden sector where only the most desperate or foolish dared to venture. "Are you certain about those coordinates?" Zethra asked, hoping she had misheard. "Confirmed, Captain. The signal is definitely coming from just outside the Terran zone. Energy signature suggests a civilian transport vessel, possibly carrying refugees." Zethra felt her crystalline heart skip a beat. Civilian refugees near human space meant only one thing. Someone had been foolish enough to try to establish trade relations despite the quarantine. The black market was always looking for new opportunities, even in the most dangerous regions of space. "What's the ship classification?" she asked, already dreading the answer. "IDs as a Vraxian cargo hauler, the Peaceful Venture. Crew complement shows 47 souls aboard, including 12 younglings." The mention of younglings sealed Zethra's decision. Regardless of how dangerous human space might be, the Galactic Rescue Service code was clear. All civilian vessels in distress were to be aided immediately, without exception. She had taken an oath to protect all sentient life, and that oath didn't come with convenient exclusions for dangerous sectors. "Set course for the distress beacon," she ordered. "Maximum safe speed." "Captain," interrupted her second-in-command, Lieutenant Crixon, a massive Thulorian whose species was known for their cautious nature. His thick armored hide and multiple defensive spines made him look like a walking fortress. "Perhaps we should contact Alliance Command first. Request permission to enter the restricted zone." Zethra turned to face her crew, noting the fear in their expressions. She couldn't blame them. Human space was legendary throughout the galaxy for all the wrong reasons. Stories circulated about their incredible violence, their ability to turn anything into a weapon, and their disturbing tendency to solve problems through controlled explosions. "The distress call indicates life support failure," she said firmly. "By the time we receive authorization from command, those civilians will be breathing vacuum. We're going in." The journey to the distress beacon took 6 standard hours. During that time, Zethra reviewed everything the Alliance database contained about humans. The information was fragmentary and often contradictory, compiled mostly from the traumatized survivors of first contact. Humans, according to the files, were bipedal mammals from a high-gravity world they called Earth. Their planet was classified as a Class 12 death world, a designation reserved for the most hostile environments capable of supporting complex life. The gravity was nearly double what most species considered safe. The atmosphere contained dangerous levels of oxygen, and the surface was covered with vast quantities of liquid water, a substance that most civilized species found caustic and dangerous. What made humans truly terrifying wasn't just their hostile environment, but how that environment had shaped them. They possessed incredible physical strength, lightning-fast reflexes, and an almost supernatural ability to adapt to new threats. Worse still, they seemed to enjoy violence, treating warfare as some sort of competitive game. The psychological profiles were even more disturbing. Humans displayed pack-hunting behavior, forming tight social bonds that made them willing to sacrifice themselves for their groups. They showed remarkable creativity in developing new ways to kill things, and their technology, while primitive by Alliance standards, was designed with a brutality that shocked more civilized species. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," announced Navigator Thessa. Her serpentine form coiled around her control station. "I'm detecting the distress beacon, but there's something else." "What kind of something else?" Zethra asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Multiple energy signatures moving toward the distressed vessel. Configuration suggests, oh no. Captain, those are human ships." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the life support systems. Through the main view screen, they could see the disabled Vraxian cargo hauler drifting helplessly in space, its hull breached in several places. Approaching it were 3 sleek vessels that didn't match any known Alliance design. Human ships were immediately recognizable by their brutal efficiency. Where Alliance vessels were designed with aesthetic curves and artistic flourishes, human ships looked like they had been built in a weapons factory, angular, aggressive, and covered with what could only be weapon systems. "Captain," whispered Veltar, "what are your orders?" Zethra stared at the tactical display, watching as the human ships closed in on the helpless civilians. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to call for reinforcements, to find any excuse to leave this deadly sector of space. But 47 lives hung in the balance, including 12 younglings who had never done anything worse than be born in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Red alert," she announced. "All stations prepare for contact with human forces, and may the cosmic forces have mercy on our souls." Distress call mistaken. Part 2. The human ships moved with a predatory grace that sent chills through the rescue vessel's crew. Captain Zethra watched in fascination and terror as the 3 angular craft performed complex maneuvers around the disabled Vraxian hauler. Their movements coordinated like a pack of hunters circling wounded prey. "Captain, incoming transmission from the lead human vessel," reported Veltar, his bioluminescent patterns flickering in rapid, panicked sequences. "On screen," Zethra ordered, bracing herself for her first direct contact with the galaxy's most feared species. The view screen shimmered and revealed the bridge of the human ship. The first thing that struck her was how dark it was compared to Alliance vessels. Where civilized ships were brightly lit and colorful, the human bridge was bathed in red light that cast ominous shadows across the crew. And then she saw them. Humans. They were smaller than she had expected, but there was something unsettling about their compact builds. Where most Alliance species had evolved elegant, specialized forms, humans looked like they had been designed by someone who prioritized function over beauty. Their faces were flat and predatory, with forward-facing eyes that marked them as hunters. Their skin was pale and smooth, lacking the protective scales, carapaces, or natural armor that most intelligent species possessed. The human who appeared to be their leader stepped forward. He was tall for his species, with short brown hair and wearing what appeared to be a dark blue military uniform. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly calm and controlled. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel, Indomitable," he said. "We've detected your approach to this sector. State your business here." Zethra forced herself to stand straight despite every instinct telling her to flee. "This is Captain Zethra of the Galactic Rescue Service vessel Mercy's Light. We're responding to a civilian distress call from the cargo hauler you're currently investigating." The human captain's expression didn't change, but she noticed his crew moving with efficient purpose in the background. She counted at least 15 humans on the visible portion of their bridge, all of them focused on their tasks with an intensity that was both impressive and terrifying. "You're a long way from Alliance space, Captain," Chen observed. "This sector is under human protection." "Protection?" The word slipped out before Zethra could stop herself. "I wasn't aware that humans claimed this territory." Something that might have been amusement flickered across the human captain's features. "We don't claim territory, Captain. We protect people who need protecting. That cargo hauler has 47 souls aboard, including children. They sent out a distress call and we responded." Zethra felt her crystalline features shift color as confusion replaced fear. "You're rescuing them? That's what the distress call was for, wasn't it?" Captain Chen replied. "Their life support systems are failing. They've lost main power and their hull is breached in 3 places. Our engineering teams are already aboard making repairs." The rescue captain stared at the human in disbelief. According to every report she'd read, humans were aggressive, violent, and territorial. They were supposed to shoot first and ask questions later. They weren't supposed to risk their lives saving alien civilians. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Our records indicate that humans are hostile to Alliance species." Captain Chen's expression hardened slightly. "Your records are based on what happened when your diplomatic mission arrived in our space with a fleet of warships and demanded our immediate surrender to something called the Galactic Alliance that we'd never heard of." Zethra felt her heart sink. She had read the official reports of first contact, but now she was hearing the human perspective for the first time. The Alliance fleet was there for diplomatic protection. 27 heavily armed dreadnoughts is not a diplomatic mission, Captain, Chen interrupted. It's an invasion force. When unknown aliens arrive at your homeworld with enough firepower to glass your planet and demand surrender, most species would consider that an act of war. The bridge of the Mercy's light fell silent as the implications sank in. The first contact disaster hadn't been human aggression. It had been a massive diplomatic misunderstanding. The Alliance, in their arrogance, had assumed that any species would be grateful to join their civilization. They had never considered that arriving with a fleet might be seen as threatening. Our people died in that engagement, Chen continued, his voice remaining level despite what must have been painful memories. But we're not interested in prolonging the conflict. We just want to be left alone. Then why are you here? Zethra asked. This isn't human space. Because someone sent out a distress call, Chen replied simply. We heard it, we responded. That's what decent people do. The communication was interrupted by another voice from the human ship. Captain, we've got a problem. The Vraxian ship's power core is more damaged than we thought. We can stabilize it, but they're going to need a complete replacement before they can make it home safely. Captain Chen nodded and turned back to the screen. Captain Zethra, are you equipped for power core replacement? Yes, we carry spare cores for most common vessel types, she replied automatically, still struggling to process what she was witnessing. Good. We can get them patched up and stable, but they'll need that new core before they can travel. Will you assist? Zethra looked around her bridge. Her crew was staring at her with expressions that ranged from confusion to outright shock. Veltar's bioluminescent patterns had settled into a steady blue glow that indicated deep contemplation, while Lieutenant Crixon's defensive spines had retracted completely, something she had never seen him do in a potentially dangerous situation. Captain, Crixon said quietly, if we assist them, we'll be working directly with human forces. Command will not be pleased. Command ordered us to avoid human space to prevent further conflict, Zethra replied. They never said we couldn't save lives. She turned back to the view screen where Captain Chen waited patiently for her response. Behind him, she could see human crew members working with the same efficient intensity she had noticed before. But now she realized it wasn't the focus of predators preparing for battle. It was the concentration of people trying to save lives. We'll assist with the power core replacement, she announced. But I have to ask, why are you willing to work with Alliance forces after what happened during first contact? Captain Chen was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight of sadness that surprised her. Because holding grudges doesn't save lives, Captain. And right now, there are 47 people depending on us to put aside our differences and do what's right. For the first time since receiving the distress call, Captain Zethra began to think that maybe, just maybe, everything the Alliance thought they knew about humans was completely wrong. Distress call mistaken. Part 3 working alongside humans proved to be nothing like what Captain Zethra had expected. As her engineering team prepared the replacement power core, she watched through her ship's external cameras as human technicians moved around the damaged Vraxian, hauler with practiced efficiency. The humans wore environment suits that were bulkier and less elegant than Alliance designs, but they moved with a confidence that spoke of extensive training. What surprised her most was how carefully they handled the delicate Vraxian equipment, treating the alien technology with respect rather than the destructive curiosity she had expected. Captain, Chief Engineer Naxtor reported over the comm system. The human repair teams are requesting permission to coordinate directly with our technical staff. They say it will make the power core installation more efficient. Zethra considered this request carefully. Direct coordination would require opening communication channels between the ships, sharing technical specifications, and essentially trusting these humans with detailed information about Alliance technology. Granted, she decided, but maintain security protocols. What followed was perhaps the most surprising hour of Zethra's career. The human engineers didn't just work with her people, they collaborated. When Naxtor encountered a problem with the core's quantum matrix, the human team leader, someone called Chief Martinez, offered a solution that was both elegant and effective. "Your people are quite skilled," Naxtor reported privately to the bridge. "The human chief engineer has solved 3 problems that would have taken us hours to figure out. She seems to understand our technology better than I would have expected." "How is that possible?" Zethra asked. "They've been isolated for 3 years. I asked her the same question," Naxtor replied. "She said they've been studying the wreckage from the first contact battle. Apparently humans are very good at reverse engineering technology." This information sent a chill through the bridge crew. If humans could reverse engineer Alliance technology from wreckage, what else might they have learned in the past 3 years? What capabilities had they developed while the Alliance assumed they were safely contained? "Captain?" Veltar interrupted. "I'm receiving an unusual transmission from the Vraxian hauler." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was weak, but clearly grateful. "This is Captain Torval of the Peaceful Venture. I wanted to thank both rescue teams for your assistance. My crew was certain we were going to die out here." "Just doing our job, Captain Torval," Zethra replied. "How are your people holding up?" "Better than expected. The human medics have been treating our injured, and they've managed to stabilize everyone. I have to say, Captain, these humans are not what I expected based on the stories we've heard." "What do you mean?" Zethra asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. "They've been nothing but professional and kind. When my youngest crew member, barely past his first molting, became frightened by their appearance, one of their medics took the time to explain each procedure, and even showed him pictures of human children to help him understand that humans can be gentle too." Zethra found herself looking toward the view screen, where Captain Chen's ship maintained a protective position near the disabled hauler. She opened a direct channel to the human vessel. "Captain Chen, I understand your medical team has been treating Vraxian crew members." "That's correct," Chen replied. "Is there a problem?" "No problem. I'm just surprised that your people know Vraxian physiology well enough to provide medical treatment." Chen appeared on screen again, and this time Zethra noticed details she had missed before. His uniform bore insignia that indicated not just military rank, but also medical training. His ship wasn't just a warship, it was equipped for rescue operations. "We've made it our business to learn about the species in this region," Chen explained. "When you're responsible for emergency response in a sector, you need to understand the biology of everyone you might need to help." "Emergency response?" The words came out as barely a whisper. "This region of space doesn't have regular Alliance patrols," Chen said matter-of-factly. "Ships break down, accidents happen, people get stranded. Someone needs to respond when they call for help." The implications hit Zethra like a physical blow. While the Alliance had been treating human space as a forbidden zone, humans had been operating their own rescue service. They had been saving lives, learning about alien species, and providing aid to anyone who needed it, regardless of species or political affiliation. "How many ships do you have?" she asked. "In this sector?" 12 dedicated rescue vessels plus support craft, Chen replied. "We cover approximately 40 light-years in all directions from the quarantine boundary." 12 ships, Lieutenant Crixon repeated quietly. "They're operating a full rescue service with 12 ships." Zethra realized that her entire understanding of the situation had been wrong. The humans weren't hiding behind their quarantine zone planning revenge. They were actively working to help people, including the very Alliance species that had declared them enemies. "Captain Chen," she said slowly, "how many Alliance vessels have you rescued in the past 3 years?" 137, Chen replied without hesitation. "Everything from cargo haulers to passenger liners to private yachts. We don't discriminate based on species or political affiliation. A distress call is a distress call." The bridge of the Mercy's light fell silent. 137 rescues. 137 times that humans had risked their lives to save Alliance citizens. And not once had any of those rescued ships reported the incidents to Alliance Command. They had simply returned home, probably too ashamed to admit they had been saved by the enemy. Captain, came Chief Martinez's voice over the comm. Power core installation is complete. The peaceful venture should be ready for departure in approximately 30 minutes. Excellent work, Chief, Chen replied. Captain Zethra, will you be escorting the hauler back to Alliance space? That was the plan, Zethra said. But Captain Chen, I have to ask, what happens now? My crew and I have seen things that contradict everything Command believes about human intentions. Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of sadness that seemed to encompass years of frustration and misunderstanding. That's up to you, Captain. You can report what you've seen here, or you can file a standard rescue report and leave out the details about human involvement. Either way, we'll continue doing what we've always done, responding to distress calls and saving lives. But if I report this, Command might change their policies toward human space. They might, Chen agreed, or they might decide we're an even bigger threat because we've been operating outside the quarantine zone. I can't predict how politicians will react to information that contradicts their established beliefs. Zethra stared at the human captain, seeing him clearly for the first time. This wasn't a military commander planning conquest. This was someone who had dedicated his life to saving others, regardless of the political consequences. Captain, Veltar reported, the peaceful venture is ready for departure. Captain Torval is requesting permission to thank the human rescue team personally before they leave. Granted, Zethra said automatically, but her mind was focused on a much larger question. She had 30 minutes to decide whether to shatter everything the Alliance believed about humanity, or to remain silent and allow the misconceptions to continue. Either choice would change everything. Distress call mistaken. Part 4 Captain Torval's personal message to the human rescue team changed everything. The Vraxian captain had insisted on a direct video transmission to both rescue vessels, and what he said sent shockwaves through the Alliance crew. I have been a merchant captain for 47 standard years, Torval began, his reptilian features showing deep emotion. In that time I have been rescued by Alliance forces, Caranthian patrol ships, even Thulorian emergency services. But never have I experienced the level of compassion and professionalism that these humans have shown. Zethra watched Captain Chen's reaction carefully. The human showed no satisfaction or pride at the praise, only the quiet competence of someone who considered such behavior normal. They didn't just save our lives, Torval continued. When my engineer, Krexta, suffered severe injuries during our power system failure, the human medics worked for 3 hours to stabilize him. They used techniques I had never seen before, combining their medical knowledge with careful study of Vraxian anatomy. Krexta would have died without their intervention. They also took the time to explain everything they were doing, added another voice from the hauler. My daughter was terrified when the humans first came aboard, but Dr. Sarah, one of their medics, showed her pictures of human children and explained that humans care for their young just like we do. By the end, my daughter was asking if she could visit human space someday to thank Dr. Sarah properly. The transmission ended, leaving an uncomfortable silence on the bridge of the Mercy's light. Everything the Alliance believed about humans was being systematically dismantled by the reality of their actions. Captain, Lieutenant Crixon said quietly, I've been reviewing our sensor logs from the rescue operation. The human ships are equipped with medical facilities that exceed Alliance standards. They have surgical suites, genetic analyzers, and treatment protocols for at least 30 different species. How is that possible? Zethra asked. Our own rescue ships barely carry medical equipment for 5 species. I think, Veltar said slowly, they've been preparing to help people for a long time. This isn't something they improvised after the quarantine. They planned this. The implications were staggering. While the Alliance had been focused on containing what they perceived as a threat, humans had been building a rescue and medical infrastructure specifically designed to help alien species. They had studied Alliance biology, learned Alliance languages, and developed treatment protocols for people they had never officially met. Captain Chen, Zethra called over the comm. I need to ask you something directly. How long have you been planning rescue operations in this region? Chen appeared on screen again, and this time Zethra could see the careful consideration in his eyes before he answered. Since about 6 months after first contact, we realized that the quarantine zone was going to leave this entire region without emergency services. But you had no obligation to provide those services. This isn't human space, no, Chen agreed. But it's space where people travel, and people in space sometimes need help. We couldn't just ignore that because of political boundaries. Chief Engineer Naxtor's voice came over the internal comm. Captain, I've completed my analysis of the human repair work. Their techniques are incredible. They've found ways to repair quantum matrix damage that our best engineers consider impossible. Show me, Zethra ordered. The engineering data appeared on her screen, and even with her limited technical knowledge, she could see what Naxtor meant. The human repairs weren't just functional, they were elegant. They had somehow managed to improve the original Vraxian systems while fixing them. They're not just copying our technology, Naxtor continued. They're improving it. The power core is now operating at 112% of original efficiency. I've never seen anything like it. Captain, Veltar interrupted. I'm detecting another distress signal. It's coming from deeper in the sector. Zethra felt her crystalline heart sink. Another rescue, another chance to see human capabilities in action. But before she could respond, Captain Chen's voice came over the comm. We're detecting it too, Captain Zethra. It appears to be a Zilithian science vessel. Their distress signal indicates life support failure and possible hull breach. A Zilithian vessel, Zethra repeated. Zilithians were Veltar's species, known throughout the galaxy for their peaceful nature and scientific contributions. They were also notoriously fragile, with complex environmental needs that made them difficult to rescue. Captain, Veltar said urgently, Zilithian physiology is extremely sensitive. If their life support has failed, they probably have less than 2 hours before irreversible damage occurs. Chen nodded grimly. We're aware of the time constraints. Dr. Sarah is our specialist in Zilithian biology. We can have a medical team ready for transport in 15 minutes. Zethra stared at the human captain in amazement. You have a specialist in Zilithian biology? We have specialists in most Alliance species biology, Chen replied matter-of-factly. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. Captain, Crixon said quietly. At maximum speed, we could reach the Zilithian vessel in 90 minutes. The human ships with their higher acceleration capability could be there in 60. The choice was clear but politically impossible. If she allowed humans to take the lead on a rescue operation involving Alliance citizens, she would be acknowledging their superior capability and tacitly approving their presence in the sector. But if she insisted on Alliance protocol and procedure, people would die while she maintained political correctness. Captain Chen, she said, making her decision, take the lead on this rescue. We'll follow and provide support as needed. Understood, Captain. We appreciate the cooperation. As the human ships accelerated toward the new distress signal, Zethra watched them pull ahead with an efficiency that spoke of constant training and preparation. These weren't military vessels pretending to be rescue ships. They were purpose-built rescue vehicles operated by people who had dedicated their lives to saving others. Captain, Veltar said softly, if they save my people, if they risk their lives for Zilithians they've never met, how can the Alliance continue to treat them as enemies? It was a question that Zethra knew would soon face the entire Galactic Alliance. The evidence was mounting that humanity wasn't the threat they had been portrayed as. They were something far more dangerous to the Alliance's current policies. They were proof that the galaxy's most feared species was actually its most compassionate. Veltar, she said quietly, start recording everything. Full sensor logs, communication records, medical analysis, everything. Whatever happens with this rescue, Command needs to see the truth about what humans have been doing out here. And if they don't want to hear the truth, Zethra looked at the human ships racing ahead to save people who had never done anything for humanity, except fear them. Then we'll make them listen. Distress call mistaken. Part 5, the Zilithian science vessel. Quantum Explorer was in worse condition than anyone had anticipated. As the rescue ships approached, the full scope of the disaster became clear through their sensors. The ship had suffered a catastrophic failure in its environmental control systems, and the delicate atmospheric balance that Zilithians required was rapidly deteriorating. Captain Zethra, came Dr. Sarah's voice over the comm, her tone professional but urgent. We're reading 17 Zilithians aboard, but 3 are already showing signs of atmospheric poisoning. We need to move fast. Zethra watched through her ship's cameras as the human rescue teams prepared for what was clearly a complex operation. Zilithians required very specific environmental conditions. The wrong atmospheric mixture could kill them within minutes, and their physiology was so delicate that even gentle handling could cause serious injury. "Dr. Sarah," Veltar called, out his bioluminescent patterns showing deep concern. "I'm a Zilithian. I could provide guidance on proper handling procedures." "That would be incredibly helpful," Dr. Sarah replied immediately. "Could you join our medical team? We have portable environment suits that can accommodate Zilithian physiology." Zethra felt a moment of panic. Sending one of her crew aboard a human vessel violated every regulation she could think of. But then she looked at Veltar's expression and saw something she had rarely witnessed in his cautious species: determined courage. "Go," she said quietly. "Help them save your people." What followed was perhaps the most complex rescue operation Zethra had ever witnessed. The humans moved with precision that spoke of extensive training, but they also showed a level of care and attention to detail that surprised her. Every action was carefully coordinated with Veltar, every procedure double-checked to ensure compatibility with Zilithian biology. "Captain," reported her sensor officer, "the human medical team has successfully extracted all 17 Zilithians. They're transferring them to their ship's medical bay." "How are the injured ones?" Zethra asked. Dr. Sarah's voice came back over the comm, slightly breathless from exertion. "Touch and go for about 30 minutes, but we've stabilized them. The atmospheric poisoning was severe, but we've managed to reverse the worst effects. They'll need specialized treatment for the next few days, but they should make a full recovery." "Dr. Sarah," Veltar's voice joined the conversation, and Zethra could hear the emotion in his words. "What you've done here it's miraculous. I've never seen such advanced treatment of atmospheric poisoning. How did you develop these techniques?" There was a pause before Dr. Sarah answered. "We studied the medical files from every Zilithian rescue in the Alliance database for the past 50 years. Then we identified the most common emergency scenarios and developed specialized treatment protocols. It seemed like the responsible thing to do." "You studied Alliance medical files?" Zethra asked in shock. "Public records." Captain Chen's voice joined the conversation. "Medical journals, rescue reports, anything that could help us save lives. We've been building a comprehensive database of emergency medicine for all Alliance species." The implications of this statement sent shockwaves through Zethra's bridge crew. Humans had been systematically studying Alliance species not to exploit weaknesses, but to develop better ways to help them. They had turned the galaxy's fear of them into an opportunity to become the best possible rescuers. "Captain Chen," Zethra said slowly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. What is humanity's ultimate goal in this region?" Chen appeared on screen, and for the first time since they had met, Zethra saw him smile. It wasn't a predatory expression or a sign of superiority. It was the tired but genuine smile of someone who had found purpose in helping others. "Captain Zethra, 3 years ago, the galaxy told us we were too dangerous to be part of civilized society. They quarantined us because they believed we were violent and unpredictable. Maybe they were right. Humans do have a capacity for violence that frightens other species." He paused, looking directly at her through the view screen. "But we also have a capacity for compassion that runs just as deep. When we realized that this region was going to be left without emergency services because of political decisions, we had a choice. We could accept isolation and focus only on ourselves, or we could prove that humans deserve a place in the galactic community. And you chose to prove yourselves through rescue operations," Zethra said. "We chose to become the people we wanted to be," Chen corrected. "Every life we save, every ship we repair, every person we help. It's not just about proving something to the Alliance. It's about proving something to ourselves." "Captain," interrupted the voice of the lead Zilithian scientist they had just rescued. "This is Dr. Vexara of the Quantum Explorer. I wanted to thank you personally for saving my research team." Dr. Vexara's image appeared on a split screen next to Captain Chen. The Zilithian looked weak but alert, her bioluminescent patterns showing gratitude in colors that were visible even to non-Zilithians. "Dr. Vexara," Chen replied, "we're just glad we could help. How are you feeling?" "Much better thanks to your medical team. But I have to ask, how did you know to use quantum resonance therapy for atmospheric poisoning?" That's a technique that was only developed in Alliance space last year. Dr. Sarah's voice came over the comm. We've been monitoring Alliance medical journals. When we saw the research on quantum resonance therapy, we built the necessary equipment and trained our staff to use it. We figured if it could save lives, we needed to be ready to use it. Dr. Vexara's bioluminescent pattern shifted to colors that Veltar later explained indicated profound amazement. You built quantum resonance equipment based on theoretical papers? That technology costs millions of credits and requires specialized facilities. It costs millions if you buy it from Alliance manufacturers, Dr. Sarah replied. It costs considerably less if you build it yourself and don't worry about patents or profit margins. Zethra realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. Humans weren't just copying Alliance technology, they were improving it and making it more accessible. They had taken expensive, exclusive medical equipment and found ways to build it cheaply enough to stock rescue ships with it. Captain Chen, she said, I think it's time we had a serious conversation about the future of human-Alliance relations. What did you have in mind? Chen asked. I think it's time the Alliance learned the truth about what you've been doing out here, about who you really are. Chen nodded slowly. And what happens when they realize they've been wrong about us for 3 years? I don't know, Zethra admitted. But I know what happens if they don't learn the truth. Good people continue to suffer because of pride and misunderstanding. She looked around her bridge at her crew, all of whom had witnessed the same impossible reality. Humans risking their lives to save people who had been taught to fear them. Dr. Vexara, Zethra called out, would you be willing to testify to Alliance Command about the treatment you received from human rescuers? Absolutely, the Zilithian scientist replied without hesitation. The galaxy needs to know what these people have been doing out here. Then it's settled, Zethra announced. We're going home and we're taking the truth with us. Distress Call Mistaken. Part 6, The Journey Back to Alliance Command, took 4 days. And those 4 days changed everything for Captain Zethra and her crew. Dr. Vexara and her research team had requested passage aboard the Mercy's Light. But they spent most of their time in communication with the human rescue ships that were escorting them to the border of Alliance space. What Zethra witnessed during those conversations challenged every assumption about interspecies relations she had ever held. Dr. Vexara wasn't just grateful for her rescue, she was fascinated by human technology and methodology. The Zilithian scientist had begun collaborating with Dr. Sarah and the human medical team, sharing Alliance research in exchange for insights into human adaptive medicine. Captain, Dr. Vexara reported on the second day, the humans have developed medical techniques that could revolutionize emergency care throughout the galaxy. They're not just copying Alliance methods, they're innovating beyond what we thought possible. How so? Zethra asked. They've learned to combine techniques from multiple species to create new treatment options. For example, they use Coranthian crystal resonance therapy with Thalorian pressure medicine and Vraxian bioadaptation methods to create treatments that are more effective than any single species approach. Veltar, who had returned from his time aboard the human ships, added his own observations. Captain, the humans don't just study our technology, they study us. They understand how different species think and communicate. Dr. Sarah spoke to me in perfect Zilithian technical dialect, including emotional undertones I didn't know other species could recognize. They've made it their mission to understand us, Zethra realized. Not to exploit us, but to help us. There's more, Dr. Vexara continued. They've been developing hybrid technologies that combine human innovation with Alliance science. Some of their rescue equipment is actually more advanced than anything in our fleet. As they approached Alliance space, Zethra found herself facing the most important decision of her career. She had enough evidence to completely rewrite the galaxy's understanding of humanity, but she also knew that such revelations would have massive political consequences. Captain, Veltar said quietly. Incoming message from Alliance Command. They're requesting a full report on our rescue operations. Put me through to Admiral Korthax, Zethra ordered. The view screen filled with the imposing figure of Admiral Korthax, the Thulorian commander responsible for all Alliance rescue operations. His massive armored form and defensive spines made him look like a living fortress, and his reputation for strict adherence to protocol was legendary throughout the service. Captain Zethra, he rumbled in his deep voice, Your mission report indicates you responded to distress calls in Sector 7G. That's dangerously close to the human quarantine zone. Yes, Admiral. We rescued a Vraxian cargo hauler and assisted with a Zilithian research vessel. Both operations were successful with no casualties. Good. How long were you in the restricted sector? Zethra took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. Admiral, I need to inform you that both rescue operations were conducted jointly with human rescue forces. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Admiral Korthax's spines extended slightly, a sign of surprise or alarm in his species. Repeat that, Captain. Admiral, we encountered human rescue vessels responding to the same distress calls. They had arrived first and were already conducting rescue operations when we reached the scene. And you engaged in combat? No, Admiral. We coordinated rescue operations. The humans provided medical assistance and technical support. They saved lives. Admiral Korthax's spines extended fully now, a clear sign of agitation. Captain Zethra, are you telling me that you conducted joint operations with enemy forces? Admiral, with respect, I don't think they're enemy forces. Before the Admiral could respond, Dr. Vexera stepped into view of the camera. Admiral Korthax, this is Dr. Vexera, Chief Scientist of the Quantum Explorer. I formally request permission to address command regarding the conduct of human rescue forces. Admiral Korthax stared at the Zilithian scientist. Dr. Vexera, you're supposed to be missing in the Outer Rim. I was, Admiral. The humans saved my life and the lives of my entire research team. I have extensive documentation of their capabilities, their motivations, and their treatment of Alliance citizens. This is highly irregular, the Admiral muttered. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice came over the comm. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force. I'm requesting permission to address Alliance Command directly regarding the future of human-Alliance relations. Admiral, Korthax's spines retracted slightly in what might have been shock. A human vessel is in Alliance communication range? We're at the border of Alliance space, Chen replied calmly. We've been escorting the rescued ships to ensure their safe return. We'll withdraw to human space as soon as they're safely in Alliance custody. You're escorting them? The Admiral asked, clearly struggling to understand the situation. It's what rescue services do, Admiral. We make sure people get home safely. Zethra could see the confusion in Admiral Korthax's expression. Everything he had been told about human behavior was being contradicted by direct evidence. Admiral, she said firmly, I formally request a full briefing with Alliance Command. The evidence I've gathered indicates that our current understanding of human intentions and capabilities is fundamentally flawed. Captain Zethra, this is not a decision I can make alone. Stand by for orders. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. They were now committed to a course of action that would either revolutionize galactic politics or end all of their careers. Captain, Veltar said softly. Incoming message from Captain Chen. Chen appeared on screen again, and Zethra could see the weight of the moment in his expression. Captain Zethra, whatever happens with your command, I want you to know that working with you and your crew has been an honor. You've shown us that not everyone in the Alliance sees us as monsters. Captain Chen, Zethra replied, I think you've shown us that humanity isn't the threat we thought you were. You're something much more dangerous to our current way of thinking. What's that? You're proof that we've been wrong. And being wrong about something this important means we need to change everything. As the Alliance fleet appeared on their sensors, racing out to intercept them, Zethra realized that the next few hours would determine the future of human-galactic relations. They had started this mission responding to a simple distress call, but they were ending it with evidence that could reshape the entire galaxy. All stations, she announced to her crew, prepare for the most important briefing in Alliance history. We're about to tell them that everything they believe about humanity is wrong, and we're going to prove it. The truth, she realized, was about to set both species free from 3 years of unnecessary fear and isolation. The distress call had been mistaken for a simple rescue operation, but the Deathworlders who had arrived weren't the monsters everyone expected. They were the heroes the galaxy needed.